Hello and welcome to Mining Journal with me, Paul Harris. Today we're talking about McEwen Copper. I'm joined with Rob McEwen, Chair and Chief Owner of McEwen Mining and presumably McEwen Copper going forward, and with Peter Marr, COO of McEwen Mining. Good afternoon, guys.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Paul.
Now, we're talking about copper today and specifically about the Los Azules project in San Juan in Argentina, which is currently within McEwen Mining and is going to be very soon spun out into McEwen Copper, a company which I understand is going to be have an IPO and go public at some point in the future. Los Azules is one of the world's largest undeveloped copper projects, not owned by a major mining company, and currently has a total indicated and inferred resource of some 33 billion pounds of copper equivalent. Rob, what's so special about Los Azules?
Well, one is where it's located. Up until very recently, Argentina, where it's located, was considered a problem child in terms of investment. But with the movement, the big shift to the left in Chile and Peru, the majors are starting to look at Argentina. And it was really politics rather than geology that prevented people moving in en masse to Argentina, and where we are as a pro-mining state in Argentina.
Okay, I think you're right there. San Juan is perhaps the hottest exploration jurisdiction for copper in the world at the present moment in time. A lot of exploration going on right now. Why has San Juan suddenly become the hottest place to be?
There are a number of mines that have been operating there for a while. Barrick had some, Lundin's working on developing, Fortescue's in there. We've seen Anglo and Vale looking at that province. And it's all got to the geopolitical shift and their desire to get mining going and to make it a bigger part of their economy.
And has the advancements in the lithium sector, there's been quite a few projects advancing and M&A activity with big companies coming in to take projects in Argentina and in San Juan in the lithium space. Has that contributed?
Oh, absolutely. It's giving more comfort to foreign investors that the government's laying out the welcome mat, which they hadn't done as effectively before.
Excellent. And the copper price is around $4.50 as we're speaking, and it's been over $4 for the past couple of years. What does that mean for a project with such a large copper endowment?
Well, it makes us smile a lot. It's become much more robust. Our PEA, our preliminary economic assessment, showed a very strong economic return at $3 copper. So we brought in Whittle Consulting to look at optimizing that PEA. And they've come back and said, look, we think it could be a much bigger mine and a much more profitable mine. And we're working to come out first with an updated PEA reflecting the work that Whittle's done and the drilling we will have completed by mid-year. And it's just, there's a chance it could be in the top 20 in the world when built.
I mean, that's pretty exciting. When do you anticipate having the updated PEA available to publish?
Our hope would to get it by the beginning of the third quarter, somewhere in the third quarter.
Okay. Now, obviously, one of the big things for McEwen Copper, you're looking at taking that company and creating a new publicly listed company there. You invested yourself personally sort of $40 million into McEwen Copper last year as part of a $60 to $80 million raise. What's the outlook on the remaining sort of $20 or $30 million that you're looking to raise there for McEwen Copper?
We're hoping to close in the first quarter of this year on that balance.
Okay, and what sort of investor interest, where's that interest coming from? Is that more institutions? Is that corporates? Who are you looking to bring into that financing?
The minimum investment was $250,000. And what we're seeing is some private investors coming in, and there's several funds looking at it that have expressed keen interest.
Okay, and the ultimate plan is to make the McEwen Copper a public company. What's the timeline on that? Is that going to happen before or after a pre-feasibility study?
It would be before pre-feasibility, but after an updated preliminary economic assessment and after we've completed our northern route into the property.
Okay, so that's potentially some point later this year, towards the end of the year.
Closer to the end of the year, yes.
Okay. With the, you mentioned the northern access route. What's the importance or significance of that to the project?
Well, right now, the only access to the property is what we call an exploration road. And we've never had it open in the winter, as you have to cross over 2 high mountain passes and switchbacks up and down. It would be a treacherous road to try to open in the winter. This new route, and we're only open about 5 months of the year. The new road would allow us 12-month access, lower altitude. It'd be an ideal corridor for power coming in and a shorter drive to the site.
So it'll make everything much more workable and for a longer period of throughout the year.
Yes, you could develop the property much faster. So it's a critical link in my mind.
Okay. Now, specifically regarding the work towards the updated sort of PEA, you've been doing drilling, and I imagine you're still drilling, and imagine a lot of that is focused on upgrading the inferred resources to the indicated category. Can you fill us in a little bit about the sort of drilling plan and how that's advancing?
Sure. Why don't I ask Peter to join in there?
Hi, I'd be happy to. We currently have 2 drills at site operating, and we're ramping up towards 10 drills by mid-February. The total drill program's about 53,000 meters. About 44,000 of that will be for exactly what you noted, as upgrading the inferred to indicated resource, and about 9,000 meters for some technical drilling like geotech and hydrology and groundwater.
Okay. Thank you. Can we talk a little bit about valuation now? Obviously, with a big porphyry copper deposit like this, we're talking some big numbers in terms of pounds of copper in the ground. And at the moment, I think your information says you're giving investors an attractive entry point of 0.6 of a cent per pound of copper equivalent. Can we put that into some kind of context? I think the average value of copper projects sold in the past decade is about $6 per pound for copper. So with those sort of metrics, what would realizing that kind of value do for the value of McEwen copper?
Oh, well, we expect by the time we have completed the pre-feasibility study, we'll be seeing a value not 0.6 of a cent, but somewhere north of 3 and 5 cents a pound. So at 3 cents a pound, our current valuation at 0.6 would give the project a value of 175 million. At 3 cents, it would give a value of just under $1 billion. And at 5 cents, it would give a value of better than $1.6 billion. So it's quite a leg up. It's sort of like real estate development. You buy a raw piece of land and you get it rezoned, say commercial, and then you get permits. So there's a value bump then. And then when you get it to get a permit to build, there's another value bump. And then when you build, there's a third value bump. And that's when you look at the sales of properties 2010 to 2018, there were only 2 projects at a pre-feasibility stage, and they sold for over 13 and 15 cents a pound. But you can see that progression at different stages of the project. So we think there's quite a bit of value there, and we think there's quite a bit of potential to expand on what we already have.
Those cents seem to add up very, very nicely and very, very quickly.
Yes, they do. And we see this as a way of creating value for both McEwen Mining, because it would remain a large shareholder. Post the financing, it would have a little better than 68% interest in it. And for the McEwen copper shareholders.
Okay, looking at a bit further ahead towards the pre-feasibility study, I noticed that you're building up your team, your technical team, and you're also working with some really sort of standout industry consultants such as Bechtel, Stantec, and you mentioned Whittle Consulting as well. You're also working with the preeminent architect Jason McLennan, who's an expert in sort of green, sustainable living building space aspects. What's Jason doing for the company?
He's giving everybody who's been in the mining industry an education on how we might change our approach to mining, how we can reduce our carbon print and become less dependent on a lot of the traditional methods of moving a mine forward. In effect, we want him to help us design what we hope will become the model for mining going forward in the 21st century.
Well, that's really interesting. I mean, when are we likely to see some of the results of his work?
By the time we do our issue, so in the fall.
Excellent.
I met him. He's on an international advisory board of a school of architecture that bears my name, and he created a challenge, I think 15 years ago, called the Living Building Challenge. He's been involved in just under 700 projects around the world and very innovative, cutting down water usage, power, sewage, a lot of regenerative work there. And it just seemed that we should be taking a very responsible approach in terms of the environment.
Well, I think that's definitely on the right track, because investors are increasingly looking for lower carbon, lower water usage, more responsible water usage. All of these things are becoming key investment criteria. Okay, so summing up, Rob and Peter, how about what are the main goals for 2022? What are the key things you want to achieve this year for McEwen Copper?
Peter, jump in there first, please.
Sure. Well, finish the road, as Rob mentioned. That's critical to advancing the project in a faster pace and getting year-round project development, completing the 53,000 meters of drilling, which will enable us to convert the inferred resource to 30 years or better of the PEA. And then there's a lot of technical work involved to support that and get our basis of estimate well advanced so that we're in a position to issue the pre-feasibility by July, sort of, I guess, Q3 of next year.
On top of that, we're setting up programs to plan to train the members of the local community so they can complement what we're doing, emphasizing also in the area of healthcare. And I think it's really good to be spreading that knowledge. Argentina is going to be experience a mining boom, and it's going to have more trained people. So we're going to add to that.
Excellent. Well, it certainly seems like San Juan has the potential to form a thriving mining cluster there. Well, thank you very much, Rob and Peter, for joining me today and for sharing information about McEwen Copper. Wish you well. Look forward to hearing much more about the company as the year progresses.
We'd be glad to keep you informed, Paul.
And stay tuned for more from Mining Journal.